Speaking of being happy, why don't we switch over to our hockey team here, who continues to make history? And after a rough 2020 to 2022, Bell, it's really great to see all this taking place. And again, I talked about teams built to win. Seattle is young, and they've got successful veterans, and the winning's happening right now. So why don't we get to our past slate of games here that ends a 7-game road trip?
Yes. On January 9th, the Seattle Kraken played the Montreal Canadiens and shut them out. It was a 4-0 win. Our player of the game one is forward Eli Tolvanen with 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points, a 2+- 3 shots, and 1 hit. Our second player of the game is Vince Dunn with 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points, a 2+-, and 6 shots. On the 10th, they traveled to the Buffalo Sabres, and that was also a win, a 4-3 win. Our player of the game there is Matty Beniers with 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points, a 2+-, 1 hit, 1 block, and a 5-game goal streak. On the 12th, they played the Boston Bruins, and it was another shutout win, 3-0. Our player of the game there was guard Martin Jones with 27 total saves, a 3.07 goal save above expected, and as I mentioned, a shutout game. Just a couple notes on the game here. The 7th team in the past decade to begin a calendar year with 7 or more consecutive wins, and first since the Sharks' 7GP in 2019. And they improved to 6-0-0 on their road trip and became the first team to defeat Boston in regulation at TD Garden since Ottawa on April 14th, 2022. Then we move on to January 14th. Against the Chicago Blackhawks, they won 8-5. Our player of the game there was Jared McCann, who had 3 goals, 3 points, 4 shots, and his first career hat trick. The Kraken became the first team in NHL history to sweep a 7-game road trip. And boy, did we need that after that Seahawks game. I'll move on to our... Go ahead.
Oh, no. Yeah, you're right. That was much needed.
We'll move on to our players of the week here. I went with Jared McCann. I'm giving him his flowers for that hat trick and just it's his first career hat trick in a history-making game for the Kraken. So that was amazing. And like I said, giving him his flowers. You, however, went with someone who I feel like you've been going with for a few weeks.
Hey, man, if the rookie plays well, the rookie plays well. 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points for Matty Beniers. The AllStar, 5+-, 14 shots, 3 hits, 2 blocks. I like to see he's a rookie too. He gets kind of thrown around because he's not the smallest guy, but he gets thrown around sometimes. But some of the veterans are like, let's give the rookie his chops. But it's nice to see him throw the hits and the blocks in there. A 53% face-off win percentage. I'm very happy with Jared McCann. Don't get me wrong. But hey, man, Manny continues to produce. Outside of the Boston game, I think he scored a goal in 6 out of the last 7 games coming into that Chicago game. So he continued to produce. Again, this is a rookie. He's the rookie points leader. He's the Calder Cup favorite. That's what I'll say about that. But hey, man, I mean, look at the banner. I tweeted about it on Twitter, obviously, and I tagged Aaron Goldsmith in it, and he liked the tweet, so that's cool. Hi, Aaron. But the Aaron Goldsmith after the Mariners win to put them at 14 game win streak, he said they're hotter than the sun. And I said that after the Boston game, and they took it up a step against Chicago. I don't know if you went over it with the Chicago game, but just with the Boston game, but Boston had not lost a game in regulation at home that this season. I don't think they've been shut out this season, let alone at home. Boston's like the big bad right now in the NHL, and Seattle went in and shut them out, and they looked good basically the whole game. With Boston, I had expected them at least to get on the board. You felt good about it coming into the game, but it was a signature win. You'd argue that considering the magnitude of it, it was the biggest win in Kraken history. Obviously, there's 2 seasons, but just considering the magnitude of who you beat and how impressive you look right now, I would put it up there. Just with all of this, the notes here, they look good, and there's still things that they can improve. I mean, you look at the Chicago game, 5 goals. They probably shouldn't have allowed 5 goals in that one. Boston is shut out. Hard to complain about that. That Buffalo game got a little close at the end there. Buffalo got an empty netter. Well, Buffalo's net was empty, but they got one with 6 men on the ice there. The Montreal game was a 4-0 game as well, so it's hard to disagree with that. This is a team that, I mean, we've talked about. I think we talked about it earlier. Well, at this point right now, we're not talking about them making the playoffs potentially. They're going to make the playoffs. Excuse me. They're only 2 points out of first place too, and they have games in hand against Vegas, and they're 2 points behind Vegas right now, and they've got games that they can play to come up and sneak up on them. That's the thing though with this team. Everybody, as someone who was heavily involved with the team last year for a multitude of reasons, was like, oh, why aren't they like Vegas? Vegas was very built to win now, and they're still built to win now. But if you look at this Kraken team and the youth that they have all across the board, and not necessarily just like young youth like Matty Beniers, but guys like Jared McCann, who was the first player to sign an extension this past season. Andre Burakovsky, bringing a veteran who never necessarily had taken a top dog role in his team with Washington and with Colorado. I almost said Carolina, with Colorado. The way he's contributing and should be an all-star. Vince Dunn is in a contract year he's still relatively young, and he won a Stanley Cup. One of the top deep pairing guys. Adam Larson's played really well. Both of those guys had, I believe, a +7 in the game against Chicago, which had only been done, I think, a few times in NHL history. Nobody had swept a 7-game streak ever in NHL, a 7-game road trip in NHL history ever, in the history of the entirety of the league. They've shown that they can be offensively with anybody in this league. They can be with anybody. But if we want to talk reality, right? And again, it's really happy in Kraken land right now. Bowie's off, I'm sure shooting strip cannons at someone on a hoverboard. The tentacle that they show in the pregame videos, maybe slapping somebody. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Davy Jones, the dog's probably I haven't seen that dog in months. Point being, there's still things that they can be better at. Defensive consistency. I'd like to see more of that. Again, the Chicago game, you probably shouldn't have allowed 5 goals in that one to the Blackhawks. Chicago's a bad team. They're a bad team.
Do you think they just let up because of the large lead that they took pretty early, or what do you think contributed?
I wouldn't doubt that necessarily, but even still, you don't want to do that. We've seen it in all sports. I mean, you look at last night with the Chargers and the Jaguars. It's anything's possible, man. That's why I always say you want to keep the foot on the gas. But I mean, even in games earlier in this road trip, if you look at the Ottawa Senators game, I think the first goal that they scored, I think it was Brady Tkachuk. Both D-men were like right next to Tkachuk, and they kind of watched him shoot the puck. It was like, hey man, move the stick around, just get in his way. There's things that they can be better about defensively. What'll interest me really is what this team does at the deadline, because obviously they're not going to be selling like they did last year. But it's like, with the way that this team has been playing, do you want to shake up any of the lineup and what's been happening? There's obviously areas you can improve, but just with the way that things are going right now and the chemistry that's being built, it's like, do you want to ruin any of that? That might be an off-season thing, right? Because again, there might be some people who are this happy about it and this confident in. I'm not one of them. There's only like, you're not winning the cup this year. I highly doubt that. I mean, it would be nice with the way you're playing right now. You look like it, right? But it's a long season. We just hit game 42. So, there's still 40 games to be played, right? Which is a good amount of time. Things happen.
Yeah.
Some of them unfortunate. Even the playoffs. The playoffs are a different monster. I don't know if you've heard about it. I heard about it first by Charles Barkley. He goes, hockey playoffs he said something along the lines of he really enjoys the NHL playoffs. So, if a guy that was a former NBA veteran is saying that over the NBA playoffs, it's a different beast. But defensive consistency is one thing. There are some games where they look so locked in, like that Boston game was probably one of the best games that this team's ever played. And then you see some of the times where there was a game earlier in the season when Carson Soucy just punched a guy in the back of the head with 3 seconds left, puts Winnipeg on the power play, and they score like that. And then all of a sudden we're going to overtime. It's like, if you can find that at a consistent pace, this this is a contending team. But and again, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but it's really exciting to see all this because again, they're built to win. They're built to be successful. And it's really interesting because Jaden Schwartz didn't play in that last game, so you scored 8 goals without him. But Chris Drieger still has to come back as a goaltender who tore his ACL in the World Juniors over the summer. This should be a separate video, and maybe we do that. But Martin Jones has been really solid. But the thing is, he's signed to a 1-year deal, and he's an aging guy, and I just don't think it makes sense to keep 3 goalies. I know that technically, I believe there's a roster spot open right now, a 22 out of 23. It just doesn't make sense to keep all 3, and I don't think he was ever going to be more than a rental in the first place. I think he was just signed here to be a substitute for Chris Drieger until he got back. He's played pretty solidly, and people are like, oh, he's playing better than Grubauer. He's getting more opportunities than Grubauer, first of all. But again, the defensive consistency plays into that, and that's been a thing with this team even before this win streak, right? So I get it, the calls for goaltending, sure. Like, there are saves here and there from both goaltenders, and both Jones and Grubauer. It's like, you could pick here and there, but I think the consistency plays a lot into that. But to an extent too, a lot of the people that are like anti-Grubauer, there's worse about it. There's worse people for it, and there's people who are a little bit better about it. There's some people like, oh, trade the guy, he's a bum, blah, 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 which is all wrong and stupid. And there's some that are like, I don't know, this Jones guy is playing a little bit better. Maybe, so I don't know. I consider these okay problems to have, considering you do have Drieger. But it's just crazy to see the depth that this team has in the forward lines, the defensive contributions. I believe Seattle's near top in the league in points from their defensemen. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch these. And I don't know, if you can't get into hockey, I feel bad for you because it's a fast sport. There's fighting. There's legal fighting. It's a lot of fun. So I have fun with it. And it'll be really interesting to see how long they're able to carry this, because even the game that they're playing before this episode drops, Tampa Bay is a damn good team. We saw that earlier in the year where Seattle played. Seattle did have 2 defensemen out for that game. Jamie Alexiak was out with a suspension, and Justin Schultz was out with injury. So I would imagine things are different this time, but Tampa Bay is still a good team. Granted, you beat the best team in the league in Boston in their home, but it's, it'll be really interesting to see how long they're able to carry this. With some important opponents coming up. I'm looking at the upcoming games thing here. I don't know if we don't have any notes necessarily in it, but I want to get your thoughts on it before we continue it. But there are some good teams coming up, and you'd like to see them continue it, just because, again, with you have the tiebreaker against the Kings. You have the same amount of points, but you have a tiebreaker, so you're number 2. You've got it's not necessarily super tight right now because there's so much time to go, but it could get tight. So I'd rather stack points now than worry about having to collect them at the end of the year. So I want to get your point on it as well, about how I don't know, whether it's opinions on just seeing how people have reacted to it, the crazy amount of points. I mean, you're seeing this, Bel. You're seeing 8 goals here, shutouts and all that. I just want your opinion on it as well.
I'll ask a question first. Both of those shutouts, Martin Jones was playing, right?
Yeah. He was, and that's the thing too. Is I still think that defensively, the consistency plays a part there. The Boston game, he did have some solid saves. Same with Montreal, but a lot of it, at least watching that game, he didn't have to make crazy saves. He had to make saves that you expect him to make as a goaltender. But outside of that, I mean, it wasn't like he went out there, stood on his head, and was blocking everything as if you put a brick wall in the net. He played well He played well, as he should have, but I don't think that's anything to say, yes, this is why we need to keep this guy. I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see that. So just to answer your question, yeah, he was in there for
Okay.
those games.
No, I think it's important, just like you said. Obviously, there's a high that we're riding right now, and it's easy to have your head in the clouds and be everything is fine. But you should still address those points of weakness. So if you can do that when you're winning, that's only going to make you better. But yes, as you said, there are like the Tampa Bay Lightning game. We'll see how they do then. Hopefully, they could continue to ride this high. They're coming back home. Nothing would be greater than a win at home. So currently they stand at 26, 12, and 4, second in the Pacific with 56 points. And as we've mentioned here, looking ahead on the 16th, which is tomorrow at 1 p.m. randomly, in Climate Pledge Arena. Then on the 17th, they're on the road again at the Edmonton Oilers, a 6 p.m. puck drop. On the 19th versus the New Jersey Devils, a 7 p.m. puck drop. And then on the 21st, again, back home versus the Colorado Avalanche, a 7 p.m. puck drop. So just kind of want to get your thoughts on how you think that matchup is going to go tomorrow.
It won't be a blowout as it was last game where Seattle scored like at the end, very end, to help make it not as bad. I think that game was 6-2. Honestly, I could very well see it being either way, either a low scoring game or a high scoring game, just considering the offense. Because again, you got to think about with Tampa Bay, they won 2 of the last 3 Stanley Cups, and they still got a lot of their veterans that are continuing to contribute, but they're a little bit more beatable this year. I mean, if I look at the standings here, it's not like they're like Boston, who have lost like under 10 games. Let me find them. I think they're still, oh no, they're third in their division. Yeah, they're third. Well, I mean, they're in a division with Boston, Toronto, who are also 2 of the best teams in the league. I think they can do it. I think they can extend it to 9, but I don't know. Just considering the way that this team, they beat the Kings earlier in the year 9-8, and then now we later in the month, that same month, I think it was in December, they lost a game to Minnesota here 1-0. So it's like this team can be a little bit Jekyll and Hyde, but with the way that things are going, I think that they could win this one and have a decent offensive output. It's the game after that against Edmonton, because you think about that. They just went on a 7-game road trip. They get today off, and then they go play tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and then they have to get on a plane and go to Edmonton. And Edmonton's a good divisional team anyway. So that game could be a little bit tougher, and that's maybe where that ends. But I think they can win tomorrow. I do think that they can win tomorrow.
Now, if you don't have the luxury, like some of us do, of having MLK Day off, Charles will be there tomorrow, so you can follow his live tweets to catch up on the game.